Namaskara, Krishna.
Namaskara.
Yeah. So, I think first of all, more than you, I owe an apology to the viewers. Certainly, we put a big gap for certain reasons, mostly personal. I just could not continue the conversations. I kept getting reminders from people saying, "Yeah, I thought, why don't we continue? We're very eager." And I got things. So, but anyway, we are here. I'm glad that we're just after the Dasara we are starting. I think probably a good way to start. Um, I I I I I I think there are 2 points which I still would. I think we are not yet touched there. Which is I don't know what sequence you're going, which is very very important, particularly for those who have access to all kind of knowledge sources through internet, YouTube, etc. And the most dominant theme in the cyberspace being Advaita. People would be very much looking for these clarifications on 2 important points. One is, what is the structure of Jiva? Because I think if I remember correctly, in Tattva Vaada, there is a aropita and anaropita, a combination is there, and therefore something goes away. All kind of steps are involved in that. Whereas in the case of Advaita, it's pretty simple. It's just a reflection. Abhasa evacha is abhasa, finished. They take it as a true reflection. There is no graded reflection or a tiered reflection like Tattva talks about. Because that's necessary in Tattva, because in Moksha, if you have to retain an identity, which does not ask you, which does not make you to go down to earth again, then you have to create a tiered identity in a structure in the Jiva, so that one will dissolve and other will retain. So that is some difference, some connect, some definition will be very helpful. And the second thing is, this natural leads to what exactly is the moksha. So Advaita notion being complete destruction of individual identity, merging with Brahman, and therefore there's nothing else to talk about, nothing else to worry about, sing about, dance about, etc. It's just existence, nothing else, isn't it? But in Tattva Vaada, because you retain an identity, because you retain a graded identity, and yet everybody seems to feel full in their bliss, appropriate to their capacity. There is no question of any other feeling, etc. And there is a lot of dancing, and Madhvacharya writes about dancing, singing. All those things are also there in Moksha. It says, therefore, because the whole argument seems to be, if you lose identity, who is getting the moksha? That seems to be the driving theme in Tattva Vaada. Therefore, they want to retain the identity, is my understanding. Because that can answer the question. A lot of people have this question. If I lose the identity, who is going to moksha? Who? Right? So I think that's why he's retaining. At the same time, my mind tells me he's being very clever in that. I always say he gives Advaita with a tinge of sweetness and twist. It is a difference without distinction. If everybody feels full, so that they don't even, the argument is, therefore there's no question of getting jealousy out of comparison, the argument. But I feel that it's just making the question, there's no comparison at all, because when everybody feels full, they don't even recognize there is somebody else. So psychologically, you look outside for something else only when you feel you're not full, you're not complete. If everybody feels full and complete, they don't look anywhere else, therefore they don't have any jealousy, etc. In which case, de facto, de jure, maybe there are a lot of people and different identity, plus hierarchy even in moksha, but de facto, there's no multiple identity. There's no multiplicity at all, even in moksha, excepting bearing probably the Vishnu Tattva, where that obviously you don't feel, I presume, as full as Vishnu is feeling full, and therefore potentially extending this logic, using algebra logic, the only person you would notice in moksha is Vishnu, nobody else. Therefore, it is a difference without a distinction. That is my argument about Tattva Vaada's argument about moksha. So these two are cornerstone. Because see, what is in front of us, people are able to understand, okay, and they got some point of view, because people are able to see, feel, interact, at least get some portion of what is the true interaction in waking state. In moksha, everybody is speculating. Nobody has come back, though we may claim that Madhvacharya is an avatar and all the stuff. Nobody has come back to say, you know what, I went there, this is how it is. Everybody is making inference based on their experience plus what Shastra say from their point of view. Therefore, this is some point, this is an important point, moksha point, which everybody will be wanting to know what exactly Tattvada's view. From my point of view, Tattvada's moksha would be far more attractive because you retain your identity. Therefore, you like it. It's very confusing for very many people, not if not 100% people, very many people. What is the existence without identity? That's a very difficult concept to understand. Therefore, if somebody comes and assures, don't worry, you retain your identity, but your current identity has got a lot of muck. So through bhakti and Hari Kripa, that muck gets eliminated. A pure identity which is remnant alone will go there, and you are there. Don't worry. You're there and you'll see Vishnu, you'll enjoy Vishnu's bliss, and don't worry about others. Others are there or it doesn't matter. Almost like using the Vyaharika Satya there in Moksha. That's the argument which Madhvacharya seems to make. That is my framing of the conversation. So in your schema of things, whichever way you want, kindly address these two very important issues.
Sure. Shall I start?
Sure.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Narasimha Akhilajnana Matadhvanta Divakarah Jayatyamitu Sajnana Sukhashakti Payonidhi Abhramam Bhangarahitam Ajalam Vimalam Sada Anandadirthamatulam Bhaje Tavatrayapaham Apadamodi Paryantam Gurunam Akritim Smaretena Vigdha Pranashyanti Siddhyanti Manoratha Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Hari Om Hari Om. So, if I recap our discussion earlier, so the way we started was to tell you the epistemology. How do we know whatever we know, right? So it is essential to establish these sources and, what is the validity of what is their validity? How do we ascertain their validity and so on and so forth? And based on that, we said that this is the epistemological framework. We said that Pratyaksha will tell us about this, Anumana will tell about things that are not in Pratyaksha, and Agama will tell us about Atindriya things. So the notion of evidence is what we first talked about. So that is also when we talked about, Sakshi being the final validator of any theory or any hypothesis. And we thought that we cannot come up with any theory. This is what we covered quite some days back. And then we also talked about, what are the fundamental rules by which we should be able to, go about interpreting Shruti. So in the meanwhile, so from first we established some sort of epistemology. Now we moved on to ontology. Basically, that is where we are talking about all the different entities or beings in the system. So we talked about how, what is Vishnu? What does Swatantra mean? What does, some of those things we talked about. We also talked about the Tattva Sankhya ontology, basically the split into, the Bhava, Abhava. Then again, Bhava goes into Chetana, Nitya, Chetana and Achetana. Again, within Chetana, there is Dukkha Asprishta, which is, the only being who is Aswatantra and Chetana and untouched by sorrow, that is Lakshmi. Everybody else has a bit of sorrow. So all these things we talked about as an ontology. So how did we establish this ontology? So we use the epistemology, whatever the sources we have identified as valid, we use those to basically come to this particular point. So, and I also explained the concept of Vishesha that is mentioned in Tattva Viveka, which basically tells how, right, how in our real experiences, we basically come across situations wherein there is a transaction, whereas there is an interaction as if there is difference, but there is no true difference. So without delegating or relegating that as Maya or illusion and things like that, we said that ontologically we have to accept that there is something called as Vishesha, which will allow this kind of, or which will enable this kind of transactions. So I can also talk about red rose and I can say rose is red. In one case, there is a difference between the redness and rose. In another case, we are talking about as if they are identical. So Vishesha is what enables this kind of behavior. And it is not just some human linguistic construct. It is there in the Shruti itself. The Shruti also talks about Anandam Brahmano Vidwan and also says Anando Brahma. So both are there. So therefore, you need to be able to, just like the rose is red and red rose, where there is, the two entities are related by as if they are, one is the qualifier and other one is the qualificand, right? So based, just like one is adjective, another one is the noun. So the same thing. And in other case, when I say rose is red, we are talking about what as them being samanadhikaranya. They are both in the same vibhakti and all that, so on and so forth. Therefore, we are saying that they have to be identity. So we are saying that there are two types of identity. One identity was the absolute identity. Another one is the Savishesha Abheda. So we talked about these things. Again, what is the proof or the evidence for Vishesha? Our experience is the main thing. Pratyaksha only tells us that there is something called as Vishesha, and wherein in those cases we cannot take the regular rules of Veda or Abheda being totally polarized extremes, right? And there is something that enables, it is still polarized, but it is something that enables Bheda Vyavahara without making it an illusion. So we talked about Vishesha in that sense, and then we started seeing how Vishnu and the Lakshmi and all those Jivas, all those entities are there in our system. So my plan then was to basically come to the conflict of these concepts with the larger scriptural canon, especially the with statements like Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, and before that, laid on some rules of rules of interpretation, scriptural interpretation, so that we don't see, it shouldn't happen that basically we come across a problem, then I will take a different route and then go away. There needs to, this is not like your highway, going from one point to another point. You need to have a more logical what do you call concept, right? You need to have a framework which allows you to interpret different scriptures without them looking like knee-jerk reactions. So therefore I was planning to do that. We will do that from next session onwards. I had taken one for some other people. I had talked about how Madhvacharya interprets Aham Brahmasmi and why it is imperative that only his interpretation is correct. I mean, why it is you cannot have any other interpretation because of the reasons that I will mention in next session. What I will do is in the next few minutes, I will just try to answer your points, questions that you mentioned right now, without getting in too much of depth right now. We will come to them once we have some of these ideas about how the scriptural interpretation works. See, because whatever I tell, eventually I am forced to tell you what is the evidence for that. Otherwise, it will become like a folk story only, right? I mean, that is not what we are here for. So the only thing that distinguishes a folk story or something else from maybe even folk story is true, but the only thing is that we need to have evidence.
Correct.
The evidence for us when it comes to these atindriya things, right, which is suprasensory, right, which are beyond our senses, is scripture. Because the Veda and the allied literature which we talked about, right, which includes our Puranas also, because the Veda themselves are saying that Purana is your Panchama Veda, Itihasa is your Panchama Veda. We talked about how we talked about 32 Upanishads being considered as valid ones by Raghavendra Swami and Vijayendra Swami, Raghavendra Swami, and basically by the Sampradaya itself. And with that, let me tell you the Jiva structure, basically the structure of what is Jiva, right? See, basically the way you think is that you as an Advaitins think is that there is Brahman and then there is a Upadhi. There is a BMI, that's what you call, I think. I mean, body, mind, something is there, right? Deha mano,
body, mind, intellect.
Intellect, okay. So there is a Deha, Mano, Indriya. Okay, so if that Upadhi is there, it is like, the example of a ghata. A pot is there, and the sky within that pot or the space within that pot is differentiated or is said to be different from the space outside without there being a real differentiation.
Correct.
This is, I mean, it allows us to transact as if this is different, that is different. But that Upadhi is the one which is actually causing that. The moment that Upadhi falls off, Okay, that moment that upadhis connect with that particular thing cause is left, then there is no differentiation. This is the
Akasha, Mahakaya.
correct. And the same thing applies to the Brahman and Jiva.
Jiva.
Jiva is basically a upahita Brahma, right? Even Jiva, Ishvara is also one. Ishvara has Maya, Jiva has Avidya. That is the difference. In our case, what we think of Jiva is that, basically see the consciousness is Brahman. I mean, I'm trying to put it very spatially, but I know that that is not how it is in Advaita. But let's, for the sake of explanation, let me put it like this. So there is consciousness. Wherever the upadhi is there, that is the notion of identity. Correct. But for us, so you have consciousness here, you have antakarana here. These two are different, so to speak. This is jada. This is a product of illusion, right? So once this thing falls off, all you have is consciousness. Prajnanam Brahma.
Correct.
Right. What we are saying is that there is this body-mind index. There are two types of body, this thing, right, to the Jiva. One is the external material covering that the Jiva has.
Correct.
From anadi time, from time immemorial, from beginningless time, there is something called as Linga Sharira.
Correct.
Which the Linga Sharira term is used by even Shankaracharya also. Though in later Advaitic works, it becomes Karana Sharira. Right? So he calls that thing Karana Sharira. And what we are saying is that the Jiva is also consciousness. Okay? This consciousness is essentially...
One second. Just for my clarity, for audience. So the argument is not that Jiva has consciousness. Jiva... the argument is not Jiva is consciousness, but Jiva has consciousness. That's what you're trying to say.
Jiva is like any other object which has attributes.
Correct.
Okay, I will show you my
super class.
That class doesn't have. See, that is the thing which is distinct from. For example, you Kant, right? Immanuel Kant. He says a thing in itself.
Correct.
There is no such thing here. Basically, the thing, the substance is same as the attributes. But that when I say same, that identity, we are talking about Savishesha Abheda. We are not talking about complete Abheda.
Correct.
Nirvishesha Abheda. We are talking about Savishesha Abheda.
Correct.
So there is nothing like a thing in itself on which all these attributes are sitting. For us, both are same. The thing and the attributes. Okay. And when I say again same, please remember, I am not talking about Nirvishesha Abheda. I am talking about Savishesha Abheda.
Okay.
So this is the main thing. So when I say Jiva, so same thing, right? Brahman is there. He has infinite attributes, each in infinite measure. So Ananda is there, Jnana is there, Shakti is there, Saundarya is there, Bala is there, Ojas is there, Tejas is there. There are infinite such attributes. All of them are again infinite in measure. Now, there is nothing like Vishnu on which these attributes are sitting. They are both one and the same.
That is Vishnu.
It is not just spatially. See, that is the difference between us and Visishtadvaita. Visishtadvaita, they basically say it is Aprutak Siddha.
Right.
Okay. They are saying that they are different, but they are inseparable.
Correct.
I cannot pull them out separately like that. What we are saying is not that. We are saying that they are ontologically, they are one and the same.
Right.
It is like saying Narendra and Modi are one and the same. I mean, just to give some random example there, right? But you get the point, right? So it is identity. We are not saying that they are different. So that is one key difference between Acharya's ontology and the Visishtadvaita ontology. There they are different but inseparable. When you say inseparable, it is spatially inseparable. What we are saying is they are conceptually, they are identical. They are not two different things. Okay? But when I say different things, again, Savishesha Bheda.
It's
So
like, can I say it's like a difference between, when you talk about comparative Vishishtadvaita, it's like saying the difference between a homogeneous mixture and a heterogeneous mixture.
Very good. We will come to that homogeneous. That homogeneous is the word that is Eka Rasam. Is the word that is used to describe both Jiva as well as Brahman. Okay. In samsara, from anadi time, The Jiva has the mak, that way you just called it, right? Anadi Mayaya Sukto Jiva. That's what the Upanishad says. So there is that mak around the Jiva, okay, and which is also, I mean, see, Jada in our system, right? This is another very key difference. The Jada cannot have an independent action of its own. It needs a sentient being to propel it to produce even its basic effect. For example, water flows because the Abhimani Devata is making it flow. So this is what we say, and it is not a gaps of God of gaps argument. I mean, it is not that we are trying to explain some inexplicable phenomena by positing this Abhimani Devata. We are saying that water is flowing because of Abhimani Devata's will to do so, because the scripture tells us. The scripture is the final evidence in this. So same thing applies to what is there in Moksha also. It is not to placate or to be able to assure some people, right, that your identity is not lost. It is not like that. It is because the evidence is telling that we are saying that is our theory. Basically, you formulate your hypothesis or theory based on the data, not the other way around. So the data or the evidence in this case is the agama for us. So that is where all the conflicts between Advaita, Vishishtadvaita and Dvaita happen, right? I mean, they say this is the right approach and this is the right interpretation. This is not, and that is where the discussion happens. And I think it's people need to go there and then really understand which interpretation is better or not, and it is up to them after that. But it is not to reassure some people that those positions are taken. Those positions are taken because each founder or each proponent of that school felt that that is the best representative of all scripture on hand. Okay, so Jiva is basically the consciousness, and other attributes like Ananda, Bala. Jiva also has them. Alpa Shakti, Alpa Jnana compared to Parabrahma.
Correct.
So those are all his inherent attributes. They are not toped on him. They are not superimposed on him. This is Jiva. The fundamental definition, right? I mean, when you give a definition of a Jiva, right, what does consciousness mean? See, in Advaita, consciousness doesn't really have a definition. Consciousness is the one that makes Antakarana have the effect of I. That is what it is the nearest which comes in Advaita. Basically, you say that I cannot directly explain what consciousness means. It is some sort of self-evident, but when that is there, the Antakarana will have the experience of I. So here, the self-awareness, the word self, is reduced to the Antakarana, but which is enabled by the super consciousness, whatever is there, self or whatever. In Dvaita, this consciousness is very much part or very much the Jiva itself. Okay, and though all of its attributes may not be initially or till moksha, they will not be experienced or even evident to the Jiva itself. Eventually, that's what is going to happen. And this makva that is out there, that is a linga deha. And then there are other dehas that come around that Jiva. For example, what do you call at the time of Srishti, Aniruddha gives one layer of coating. Then what we have right now is the sthula deha, which keeps coming and going, right? The antavanta ime deha nityasyokta sharirinaha. So that also is there. And so the linga deha or whatever it is, those are the avaranas. So some of the scriptures, they talk about, actually in one Bhagavata verse is there, which tells that, this particular linga sharira plus whatever is there inside is called Jiva. So the word Jiva can either refer to the one which is purely there or to the one with the covering. Both are called Jivas at times. So you'll have to be able to distinguish based on the context.
Context, correct.
So this is the basic idea of Jiva. So in its pristine state, when it is rather, there is nothing like pristine state, the way Christians think, right? Christians think, for example, that there was some default state when people were all happy. Adam and Eve were happy. Then something happened, after which there is a fall from sin or whatever it is.
All right.
In fact, if you see ISKCON, some of them, they propose the same theory. There is a fall from grace kind of thing.
Correct.
We do not have that. So we, as in all schools of Vedanta and even many other schools, right? We have say that the Jiva by default, as in from time immemorial, has always had ignorance. Only in Moksha, basically that ignorance and all the non-Jiva parts, they break off and the Jiva manifests as is. So this is its pristine state. There is nothing like a default state. That's what I was trying to correct myself.
Right.
So in this pristine state, Jiva is basically Ananda, Jiva is basically Jnana, Jiva has Prakasha, Jiva has also, Tejas, Ojas and things like that. So that is why you find that, the hierarchy or whatever it is explicable, because the Jivas are of different sizes. Sizes as in, in Yogyata.
Correct.
I'm not talking about physical size. Physically, all of them are Anu. Right?
Correct.
So in Moksha, whatever bliss the Jiva experiences. Okay, so there is one more point to be made actually. Moksha, we think, is basically going to some place or whatever it is. That is true, but that is not the only thing. So yes, Jiva does go to my Vaikuntha and some other places, but after that they are everywhere here. They are allowed to go anywhere there. They have no problems. They don't have any binding there. So they are very much in this Brahmanda, and they are unaffected by the Prakriti because they don't have the Sharira to bind them.
Okay, I have a question here. So again, this is a kind of a begging the question. The sense that there's a place, but it's not a place. That kind of an argument seems to be.
No. The place is there.
If
they go to the place.
That's what I'm trying to argue. It is not necessary, because the way you're explaining, that's not all necessary, because you're kind of positing a place just to reassure people there's a place. But after that, you say there's no limitation. You can still come back and all over be around, but you're not bound, you're saying. In which case, why don't you simply say there's no place? It is just that our notions, mental models have to be broken, like what Advaita is talking about. When the mental models are broken, the liberation is here, right here. There's no there to get liberated. That seems to be a far more logical argument.
No, that's the problem is with the evidence part, sir, again. So the evidence says that, yavat shvetam na gacchati, tavanna muktir bhavati. So there is an evidence, scriptural statement which says that you will not be able to get your complete ananda out, manifest out, till you go to that particular Shweta Dvipa. Yavat shvetam na gacchati. So there are these statements that are made.
Again, sorry for interrupting you. See, this is the problem again. Shweta Dvipa, because it's a Shweta, what is it? What Dvipa is called? Huh? Correct. Shweta Dvipa, you said, right? Because the Shweta is bright white, Dvipa is island, therefore it is a place. It could be a bright understanding in the mind is called Shweta Dvipa.
Yeah, correct. But the problem is that, sir, there are many other scriptures which are telling you, the position of these places. They are telling you how beings are there in that place. And, they are telling you what are the different rupas of Krishna.
No, say that. No, you're elevating Puranas. The problem with Tattva Vaada is they're always elevating Purana to the highest level.
So that's an epistemological problem. Now, we looked at that part when we did this thing. Well, let me recollect that thing for you. Right?
No, I'm sorry for interrupting again. I agree with you. You first in the beginning, you put all these things. For you, Purana is very important. You told, I understand.
No, but I told you the reason also for that.
I'm only saying, Vedas doesn't.
What I'm saying is that it cannot be alleged that, we have a, some sort of partiality towards Puranas or something like that, which is not based on evidence.
Vedas talks like that. Vedas talk like that. Do you agree with me?
Sorry, what's that?
Vedas do not talk like this.
We not talk like which one, sir?
Like saying there's a place, you have to go there. It doesn't say anything like that.
No, but it does talk about a Brahmanda creation. Now, for example, Tripadasya Mrutam Divi, it says that thing, right? There is all these bhutas are there in one place. Then in the Purusha Sukta, it says there are Tripat. And then whichever form of Brahman was there in this Tripat, which is these three places, right? That person was again that Purusha again manifested here. And that same manifestation basically then continued to produce all these seasons and things like that. So the Purusha Sukta is very clear that, there are those places.
No, Tripada you literally translate 3 feet.
3 quarters.
3 quarters. Okay, all right. Right? That is interpretive. Why should you take
No,
it as?
okay, I'll tell you one small problem, sir. If
Yeah.
when you say interpretation, are you basically trying to undermine the word and its object relationship?
I am not.
Yeah,
I
I
am.
mean, let's come on to one page, right? For example, if I tell you, right, Ramo Ravanam Ahanat, right? Rama killed Ravana. You cannot interpret that to say Hitler loved Idli, correct?
Who said that? Who said that?
No, you are not. I'm not saying.
It is. It is.
Saying that.
Since you are joking here, it's possible Hitler may have loved Italy because Netaji
So that's fine, but that is not the meaning of that statement.
given them Italy.
So I'm saying that you cannot interpret that line to mean this because
No,
there is certain
it is not random
linguistic.
like this because time and time and again, Vedic statements have been interpreted many times to be sometimes physical, most of the time non-physical. It is not new rule I'm talking about. Routinely, they say,
That's
okay,
fine.
that's what it
See,
means.
this is the reason.
Oh.
So this is the reason why I want to talk about the rules of interpretation before we get to the tenets. So the main rule of the interpretation again there was that mukhyartha applies over amukhyartha. So if I say that there is a particular place over there, right? It is the direct meaning of that, which means that there is a place over there, is more valuable or more. It has more priority than something which says that there is a state in which that person exists over there or something like that. That is a lakshanik artha. Jahat swartha, so this is the basic commerce or this is the basic transactions, linguistic transactions we have. So our transactions, our linguistic commerce goes with these rules. So the same thing have been culled out and then they have been applied to come to these tenets. So according to those rules, the idea is that there are places. The Shruti is telling that the Shruti also tells you, right? Itihasa Puranam Panchamo Vedanam Vedaha. It has told you, it has not asked you to ignore that. In fact, of the other things that Narada tells there at Sanat Kumara, Jyotish Vidya, Nakshatra Vidya, and all those things, Deva Vidya, Pitu Vidya, all those things.
Yeah.
Itihasa Purana are singled out to tell that they are Panchama Veda.
Again, I'm sorry to interrupt you again. That is a statement made as a guidance. Because if you take it literally 100%, are you saying each and every statement of Purana has to be deemed to be Vedas? Then the all kind of stuff in the Puranas, you think they are Vedic knowledge?
No, I have a small problem. See,
Yeah.
you are assuming that Vedas are very non-miracle or non-mysterious kind of stuff, and Purana has all these exaggerations.
Correct. You can say that. That's precisely what I'm saying.
Yeah, but there are exaggerations in Vedas also, right? There are Vedas which, for example, Vedic statements which talk about cows walking in the heaven upside down.
That is what I'm trying to say. Therefore, that's what you do. You interpret.
No, 1 minute. So 1 minute. So the problem is that mukhya, if there is a badha for the mukhyartha, then we go for the amukhyartha. Now the question is that what is the nature of this badha that is accepted? Badha means blocker, obstacle, or objection, kind of, not opposition. That is the point of badha. So the thing is that we always, right, as our question is how much your scripture can tell you extraordinary stuff that is not seen in your day-to-day life, right? Eventually, for all of us, when I say all of us, I'm not just talking about Vedantins. I'm talking about not just Hindus, even Muslims, Christians, everybody else who has a God-based system, right? Or even a scripture-based system, they have to grapple with this problem. Whatever it tells there doesn't make sense in today's world, right? I have not, at least rather, I have not seen that in my experience. So the question is, how will I take that thing? So everybody comes to this problem. And I think I answered this one. The way we had talked about this is, see, for example, let's take this idea of, Ananta Guna Purana itself.
No, sorry. That is too abstract. Let me give you a very physical thing which everybody will understand. Ananta Kalyana Guna Purana become very abstract. Physical thing I will tell. Varaha Avatara you take. Do you really think there was a very, very large wild boar which lifted earth out of the sea when the sea is in the earth itself? Do you really think it's literally there is a wild boar there? That's what Puranas talk about.
1 minute. So Puranas give. So to be able to get to the Puranas meaning, you need to know, first of all Puranas, number one, and you need to interpret that in a way that it is agreed with this thing. But let me come to the interpretation. Our interpretation of that Varaha thing is, yes, there was a wild boar, Vishnu's this thing, which looked like wild boar, which did pick up from the earth, from the sea. Now, which sea is that? This is not the sea on earth. That's an assumption you are making. The Purana doesn't say that. The Purana does say that, there is some large body of water, definitely, in which the earth is placed. Okay, and then he lifted it and put it in the place where it, instead when the other guy pushed this thing. Now, if you remember, Bannanje Govindacharya, he even quotes Narasimha Purana, which says that basically the earth was out of its gravitational orbit. It had gone out, so he pulled it back and then kept it there.
Exactly. Likewise,
right? I mean, no, the point is, Purana itself is telling you the interpretation there. Therefore, I take it on its face value.
I will tell you.
Yeah.
There is a very logical way. I think I also. Oh, I lost it. Hello.
I'm here, sir. I'm here.
Oh, okay. So I think I wrote about it in a couple of things in Facebook also. Are you still here? Oh, okay. Not a problem. I thought I lost you. So the thing is, very clearly, you can even not only Purana, what Varahavatara Purana says, you can also take Rigveda, connect it, and go back to cosmology and clearly establish how the earth can come out of water. Clearly, which I've written multiple times. Therefore, it makes
one minute. I mean, I'm not denying that, you can give a figurative explanation to that situation. The question is, will you prefer a direct interpretation or a figurative interpretation?
Whichever makes more sense to me.
No. So the making more sense to me is determined by my current limitations or what is there in my experience. There is a problem there. That's what we are trying to differ on. My point is that, for example, that's why I was trying to tell you Vishnu. If I look at my experience, there is nobody who is just Gunapurna and without any flaws. So will I tell that, the scripture is basically flawed? Okay. Or Sahasra Sirsha Purusha. Take the same thing, right? There is a 1,000-headed guy and who has 1,000 eyes and 1,000, ears or whatever is there, right? That is not possible. No, he will look odd. One eye per head kind of thing. Right? So there is, and we have not seen that person in our immediate experience. So should I deny that thing as false, or should I say that, look, I mean, should I be little more intellectually honest and then say, see, it is beyond my experience. So there may be one such being. Okay, I will try to understand that based on other scriptures also. For example, the Mudgala Upanishad, which tells that it is basically infinite forms which has infinite heads and infinite this thing. The Sahasra doesn't word mean 1,000 exactly, but it means infinite. So based on that, I will try to understand that. Even if I have not seen that in my experience, as long as it is scripture whose pramanya is nischita, whose validity is certain, I will have to say that yeah, it is true. So I will go with figurative explanations. I will go with indirect explanations if there is a badha. That badha should be, there is another scripture which is blocking it. There is some other larger fact that is blocking it. Or if it is, for example, if it tells me Aham Brahmasmi, I will have to say, sorry, no, I know that this is my personal experience. I cannot be Brahma. So unless it is very deep and I am kind of, validated it beyond all doubt, if it concerns me, then I can tell that, that statement needs to be reinterpreted. If it is something beyond me, I will admit humbly that, yes, it is something that is possible. I'm not just Varaha. For example, take a simpler case, right? There are kings who is supposed to have some 10,000 sons. It is impossible, right? I mean, how can they produce it in the normal way, right? I mean, it is not, so even in the fact that, Rama ruled for 11,000 years. Right? I mean, that was one of the recent discussions that we had elsewhere, right? So there, I mean, all of these things, we have to say, yes, it is beyond our comprehension. It doesn't, but still in my humble and basic intellectual integrity, if I admit that as a Purana, as a Pramana, I will have to give that thing, I will have to say it is true. The question is, so your real question should be, why are you saying Purana is a Pramana in an undiluted manner? You should give figurative expression. But again, the same thing. What constitutes Badha is something that we need to figure out. We need to define first before we say that it deserves a figurative explanation. I'm not saying figurative explanation is not there, by the way, please. I am admitting that there are cases where there is figurative
Sure, you
explanation.
know, I'm sure you do, because
Yeah.
every time,
So,
every now and then you do only figurative. That is why I'm saying it is much
no,
more.
I mean, but again,
interpretation.
there is,
That should be the logic to be adopted.
yeah. So my point is that by default I don't jump into figurative explanation because it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, when I say makes sense to me, right? Please, if we dig deeper into what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, what we are saying is that, look, I have seen some people with 2 hands and 2 legs walking. So I have had certain experiences in which there is no person who has 4 hands. So therefore, any scripture that tells there are person with 4 hands is doing a figurative thing. That is not the nature of Baadha that is acceptable. That is not even intellectually honest. Intellectually honest Baadha means that, I admit that, I have limited experiences. The scripture is telling things beyond Atindriya, beyond the Indriya, whatever the Indriya can provide. So I will admit whatever it says, as long as there are no Baadha from other scriptures or of scriptures of stronger priority. For example, if Purana is telling that something which is conflicting with Veda, I will have to discard that thing. So I think we will stop it here.
Okay.
I want to tell one more small point and then we will stop here. See, even in Moksha, right, the singing, dancing or whatever it is not, I mean, that is a natural activity that comes. It is not that activity is giving some extra joy to the Jiva. The Jiva's joy, whatever bliss is there, that is same thing is getting expressed out there. For example, when I am very joyful, I will make some movements, right? I will dance. That is what is Mukta is also doing there.
Okay, we will debate it later because it asks a lot of conversation around it.
Sure.
Whenever you logically come to Moksha, we'll discuss
Yes.
it there.
Yes.
So we want to stop here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much. I'm very glad that you're back, and sorry for the delay. And again, I apologize to the viewers. So we are back in full gusto, and probably we have a lot more interactions, debates now than before, because you're laying the groundwork. I cannot argue with you. For example, you say this is how Tattva Vaadis, Madhvas want to define as pramana. I mean, I can't argue with you. That's your borderline, your boundary content.
No, you can argue on that also. You can tell that, what is the basis of accepting Veda as a pramana.
No.
Right?
I in the context of the conversation we are having for larger audience, I don't want to do that, because right. I told you in the beginning itself, I don't want to frame this as Advaita versus Advaita debates. I want to frame it as contrasting with some key points of Advaita, so that you are able to explain the point of view for benefit of everybody else. Therefore, because otherwise I will say, forget about Puranas, dump it. Only Prasana Trayi to be taken, right? I would do that. That's what I would do. Advaitins do. So, but that I don't want to go there.
No. Advaitins also they don't dump Puranas, sir. Please. I mean, there are. I mean, if you see many of the preserved copies, they are done by Advaitins only. I mean, you will find Iyengars preserving Vishnu Purana and Madhvas preserving Bhagavata Purana. But a lot of other stuff is done by Advaitins only. So
Sure. I'm making an extreme viewpoint as far as Advaitis are concerned, scholars are concerned. Okay, all right, you need to somehow disseminate all these concepts. So fairy tales is acceptable. That is the respect they would give for Puranas. I'm sure that both Advaitins as well as Advaitins are going to send stinking notes to me on this. I don't want to go there. You say, because to some extent, the only accusation I would do on you is you're too clever. You decide what should be the end conclusion. Accordingly, you're defining what are pramanas. That's the way it seems to me.
So we should. That's a very good point, actually. So we should debate as to why these things are pramanas first, and then we talk about how we are deriving the conclusions.
Okay, all right.
That is why I first established this.
You did.
So much.
You did
so
that. Yes. I totally agree with you. In fact, I remember I even surprised. I expressed surprise to you saying that, oh, why are you doing? I thought the ontology comes first. You said no. On what basis you decide the ontology? There has to be evidence that is Atindriya. Therefore, you logically explain why epistemology comes first. So thank you very much. I don't want to hold you anymore. I'm already late for you. So thank you, and we will continue this. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Krishna.